Take responsibility for your life. Achieve fulfillment with recovery. Check out responsiblerecovery.net.
In about December of 2000, my aunt and uncle came back and they were like, hey, we can actually take another kid. We'd be happy to. We have because they're actually pretty well off. They both went to college and have really nice jobs. And so they came back and gathered me up and took me with them. And we ended up moving into a house in NorCal because they got a job up there. And so it was what originally started out with 6 kids with my 2 half siblings, my older brother, my older sister, my younger sister, and me. Ended up being just me and my sister with my aunt and uncle. And so my younger sibling, well, my older brother and my younger sister actually moved back to Barstow with my biological parents. Somehow they came and got custody of them. Meanwhile, my aunt and uncle got custody of me and my sister. So my sister and I are much closer than any of the other siblings in my family. So we moved into NorCal, and then I was 11 and a half. And that was interesting. So I haven't been surrounded by like addiction and violence my whole life, but I have been put into very weird situations that have in turn kind of made me a strange type of person, just because I didn't learn to deal with things the way normal people deal with everything else. So when I moved in with them, they had never had kids before, and so they kind of had to figure it out as they went. And so like they would come up with very creative punishments, which were always very weird. They would, like, if I didn't turn in a homework assignment, I would have a T spot, which stood for take everything away, TEA, spot, for a short period of time. So from Friday night until Monday morning, I would actually have to sit upstairs in like this little office area. I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone. I wasn't allowed to read anything. I wasn't allowed to do any homework. I had to sit there by myself for 2.5 days. Nothing. You couldn't do anything. You literally just had to sit there for 2.5 days, not talking to anyone. Lunch and dinner was a peanut butter bagel and water. Breakfast was, Cheerios and a glass of milk, and that was it. And then Monday morning, you finally got to go back to school. And those always really pissed me off because it always seemed like an overreaction to everything that was kind of like a 5-point homework assignment, and I get an entire weekend taken away from me. But on the other hand, I could have done the homework assignment and not gotten it. But it was mentally going through a T-spot. It was not great. It was pretty mentally challenging to just sit there by myself with nothing to entertain me for, 2.5 days. And mind you, I didn't just have one of these. I had a whole summer of them once. I had to sit by myself at the table, like not talking to anyone. Like if I was a minute late, like downstairs to be ready, I had to pay this glass pumpkin, like $20, $50, stuff like that. If I didn't do a chore on time, I had to pay the pumpkin. Fortunately, like I said, they did the best they could. So like the pumpkin, when I graduated, all that money was given back to me. But at the time, I've had a job since I was 14. So to have the very little money I'm making be put into this thing, and it's just like a punishment, you're just like, oh my God. But of course I get the money back. So is it really a punishment? And then, the same thing goes for the T-spots. I could have done the homework assignments, but I was just like every other kid. Of course I'm going to skip a couple assignments, And so I am forever grateful to my aunt and uncle for taking me out of a situation that like could have continued to be horrible. I don't know what my grandpa's daughter's husband would have continued to do. Who knows? Or I could have gone back with my biological parents, which also doesn't seem healthy. So even though things were weird and I still didn't learn to be normal, which I always just so desperately wanted, I'm so grateful to them and like the opportunities that they've given me, because I would not be who I am today without them. But that's all I wanted. When I was in high school, you still have those stupid homework assignments where you're like, oh, tell us about your parents, tell us about your grandparents, tell us where you came from. I don't know. I literally don't know. Like we basically had this rule when I was in high school: don't ask questions. I don't know anything about anything because you're not allowed to ask questions. Like my aunt does not like her stepdad. Well, he's passed away now, but we weren't allowed to talk about him. Even though he was my grandpa, you weren't allowed to talk about him. So I know nothing about him. I don't know anything about my grandma because we weren't allowed to talk about her either. I don't know, my aunt doesn't talk to her sister, my mom, at all. I don't know why. We're not allowed to talk about it. So I'm just in this like cave of mystery where I literally know nothing because I'm not allowed to talk about it. So finally I turned 18 and all I wanted was to be normal. I've never been normal my entire life. You know, I had the addicted biological parents, and I lived with my grandparents. And my grandparents always at my school, it's like, oh my God, just let me be a normal kid. And then I lived with my aunt and uncle. I didn't have the key to my house the entire time I was in high school. I just sit on my porch, no matter if it was raining, it doesn't matter how hot or cold it was. I just sit there and wait until both of them got home. Because I took my bike one time without permission and got hit by a car. Yeah, no kidding. So I ended up losing the key to the house because of that. And we're talking like 4 years of high school and all of 8th grade, 5 years without the key to the house. So when I say things weren't normal, they definitely weren't normal. We had weird, punishments. We had a no talking rule, basically. I don't know anything about, where I come from or anything like that. And I don't know anybody on my biological dad's side. I don't know. And when you talk about medical history, nothing. I have no freaking idea. And that's kind of something important to know, So I turned 18 and I actually got accepted into SDSU. And I was super stoked. And of course, so I'm 29 now. I was 18 at the time. And from this point forward, I will call my aunt and my uncle my mom and dad, because that's who, to me, is my mom and dad. And so my dad told me, don't go to college if you're not ready. But at the time, that didn't make sense to me. I was like, no, that's what you do. You graduate high school and then you go to college. And fortunately, because of my weird family history, I was actually able to get really good financial aid because they want your biological parents' financial income. And I hadn't talked to them since I was 4 because they didn't reach out to me to be like, hey, how's it going? In fact, the one time that my biological mother reached out to me was via Facebook, and it was like a message, and she goes, hey ho, how's it going? And I haven't talked to this woman since I was 4, and the reason I'm not with her is because she, was a drug addict and alcoholic, and that's the first thing you have to say to me. I never messaged her back. I was like, I'm good. And so I got really good financial aid because I don't talk to my parents. I don't know what their income looks like, and fortunately I don't. Since my aunt and uncle are technically only my guardians, I don't have to put them as my financial guarantors. So I got really good financial aid, which was really bad because I went to San Diego and I went to 0 classes. Not a single one. All of them were gone. So instead, I spent that money on rent and alcohol. So I got down there and I couldn't get into a dorm, which a dorm probably would have been better because I would have been surrounded by people. But instead, I got an apartment where I had the liberty to throw parties and, just live a life outside of the school, which is probably not what I should have been doing. And my dad was completely right. I should not have gone to college if I wasn't ready. Now I know what that means. I'm like, okay, I should have waited. I should have saved the money because student loans are horrible.
Take responsibility for your life. Achieve fulfillment with recovery. Check out responsiblerecovery.net.